Okay, so hello everyone. I am Kamil, and I will be presenting my work on muTransfer mixture of experts done with Janek and Mateusz under the supervision of Professor Marek Cygan. Okay, so this topic has like two parts, muTransfer and mixture of experts. So let's start with the more enigmatic one. What's muTransfer? And why are we even interested in it? So the main question we have is how to train a good language model. And the answer to this question, however many clever tricks you have in your training, is always to train a really big model and to train it for really long. That's what scaling laws say. We have approximate solutions as to how good the loss will be at the end of such training. But one problem with training such a big model is that you also have to have good hyperparameters, and such hyperparameters are expensive to obtain. Most of the time, people perform some kind of grid search or sweep over the hyperparameter space. Most of the time, at least learning rate has to be tuned right. And running a lot of those experiments can get very costly. If you have smaller models, like smaller version of your big model, you can probably tune them, but you don't really want to tune on 2 trillion parameters models because you'll just throw a lot of money on it, and most of those trainings will either diverge or be suboptimal. So yeah, so that's basically the problem that was tackled by the team of researchers from Microsoft and OpenAI. And they wrote a series of papers on this kind of a way to deal with this problem. And the last one is the most practical one. It's called Tensor Programs 5. This is at least the fifth one in the line. And it's mostly concerned about this transfer of hyperparameters. And the gist of it is actually that you can tune hyperparameters on a small model, and then as you expand the model, as you make the width of the model scale up, you can transfer those hyperparameters, modifying them slightly, to be really close to the optimal values. So we know that training probably won't diverge, and it will be really close to the optimal one. And also a quick refresher on mixture of experts. So maybe a comparison. If you take a normal transformer, there is a layer called feed-forward layer. Those layers have most of the parameters in the model. And in normal transformer, you just put every token into this single layer, and all of them go through. And yeah, you get some results, but those layers tend to hold like the knowledge of the model. So maybe we could just put more of those parameters into those layers, but that would be slower. So the idea behind mixture of experts is you have a lot of those copies of those layers. All of them have separate weights, and there is a network before those experts that chooses what expert will be best for a given token. And and then what we get is we get the benefit of having more parameters, but only a small subset of them is used on the forward phase of our model. So we get way less computations. And there are a lot of flavors of mixture of experts. The one on the picture is called switch transformer. So you just take the best expert. Sometimes you have all other routers that take 2 or more experts. Okay, and why is it useful? Yeah, it's, as I said, it allows you to cram more parameters without increasing the amount of computation at inference time. And now big models are really concerned with inference time because inference is most of the lifetime of the model. And the big state-of-the-art models are actually using it. So I pulled up the data from Llama 4 Behemoth, and it has 2 trillion total parameters, and it uses 16 experts to have less active parameters, like around 300 billion. Yeah, so we have those two things. And now the question is, what can we do with it? So the original paper didn't really, those original muTransfer papers don't really take a mixture of experts into account. And especially a router matrix isn't really well founded in this computations. And yeah, we wanted to answer this question: how should we scale hyperparameters as we scale MOEs to infinity? And how could we scale? So we decided to scale mostly with the width of the model. So basically, we have the same number of experts. They are just growing in width. So each expert has more parameters. The second way we could do it is to have just more experts. And this would be way out of the framework of typical tensor programs and muTransfer. But we did some experiments with it. And I will go to the results later, but turns out it works, not the worst. So first of all, we had to implement normal muTransfer, and yeah, judging by the conferences and the discussions we had with some people on conferences, it's not that easy because the papers aren't written in the most straightforward manner. But the most important part about the math that we can check for muTransfer is we want to keep kind of activations, the single numbers in model in check. So as the vector goes through the model, the individual entries in the activation vectors don't really blow up to infinity as the model grows, or they don't diminish to zero. So this is one part. And the second most important part is that they update. And this update also shouldn't diminish to zero, but also shouldn't blow up to infinity. So we have learning, but it doesn't diverge. And yeah, how does it look in practice? So before we implemented muTransfer, we did a lot of plots, and we see either random things on the bottom plots or some very clear trends, mostly on the top plots in some layers, which do get straightened out. So the x-axis is model width, and the y-axis is the activation size. And we see that after implementing, those lines are basically flat. So that means that those activations don't really grow or shrink as we scale the model. So that means that we implemented it quite well. And the most important part, we see the learning rate transfer. So the left plot is without this muTransfer, and we see that the optimal learning rate shifts to the left. But with muTransfer, the optimal learning rate stays roughly the same. It goes a bit to the right, but that's also what happens in the original papers. And yeah, now a bit of a math break because we also did the math, and I guess everyone watching this on the video can skip for like 4 minutes if they want to. Yeah, but in original Tensor Programs 5, we had 3 types of weights that we wanted to see if we can fit into. There's input weights that map constant dimension to a growing dimension. This is like the input to the model. We have constant vocabulary size and a growing model size. Hidden weights that map growing to growing, which is kind of like MLPs or kind of like experts, at least what we thought. And the output weights, which map growing dimensions to a constant dimension. So it's kind of like output, which vocabulary size is constant, and again, model size grows. And then we had to kind of define MOE mathematically. And there's an easier way than saying that there's some kind of conditional computation. You just multiply router by the experts And this is the output of MOE layer if you don't care about any speedups. What we had to do is we had to get like the size of the input right, but this we kind of assume in this mathematical framework. We wanted to get the output of the of the layer right, but that's easy. The hard part are the gradients, because we have to know what kind of gradients we get to have correct update sizes. And yeah, what happened? We did derivations, and the gradient over the experts, that was an easy part, and it fit into the hidden weight. But the gradient over the router, it also fits into the output weight this time, but this is the harder part. And by the harder part, I mean we have the entire appendix dedicated to proving that it actually works the way we want. This happens with papers that have any kind of math in them, that the most important math is always delegated to the appendix because people don't tend to get through it. Yeah. And this is the end of the math break. So does it work? And as we can see on these graphs, it does. So the middle and the right one are with the middle is partially implemented, so we didn't really do anything to the router in the middle one, and the right one also has router correctly scaled. Turns out the scaling of the router isn't as important, but still everything works, and especially works better than not implementing muTransfer in any way. So here's kind of a table of how you should scale the hyperparameters. So mostly what happens is you take like base learning rate and then you divide it by some parameter. And the blue ones are the scalars from original papers, and the green ones are ours, so our derived ones. And the red one is basically, if you took the gray ones from the router and the red one, you have the middle thing I showed earlier, so without any modifications to the router. Yeah, so we also checked if we can transfer hyperparameters throughout other dimensions of scaling. And turns out it works quite well. So the left one is expansion rate, which is basically you take more experts, which are constant size. And the right one is granularity. So you have the same total size of all the experts, but you take more smaller experts. So you can have more configurations of those experts that could be activated. And it turns out it scales pretty nicely. So we took all of our findings and we wrote a paper. We actually got accepted to ICML workshop with it. And yeah, I think that's most of it. So thank you for your attention.
So I have a question. The person not have a question? If not, so like basically this muTransfer argument, like, is it not, so basically the gist of the idea is to kind of keep to initialize weights.
Yeah, first you have to yes, you need to initialize weights and then scale learning rate in the appropriate manner, because you have to also want the updates to not blow up the model into infinity.
Okay, so it's a relatively simple one.
And so it's like implementation is relatively simple when you get math correctly, and you know what you're actually implementing.
I would like to mention that it's not trivial to check whether the implementation is correct.
Janek.
Okay, so okay. Sorry. I would like to add that it is not trivial to check whether the implementation is correct, because like you need to run your training and then see whether the learning rate stays, and you need to run it through the whole scale of the models. So the verification process is complicated. That's what I wanted to add to the implementation part. That's why we spent quite some time implementing it, and that's why it's not trivial.
Yeah, and in general, there are three things you can use to achieve these results, or you must use. There were three rows in the table that was shown. So you can choose initialization as well as scaling learning rate and parameter multiplier. And all those three things have to be set up perfectly for everything to work.
Does anyone have any other questions? If not, like, I have one small question. Like, what's the basic mathematical, let's say, idea here behind, like, why this satisfying this condition actually improves this transfer?
So the mathematical idea is to have like consistent training dynamics, so you don't have anything blowing up or diminishing to zero. And then the transfer is less of a like the thing that happens, so that the one learning rate is the best for all the models, is less of a mathematical idea and more of a empirical result that when you run it, if you keep all those training dynamics consistent, the sizes of all the activations, you actually get like one consistent learning rate, that's the best, and one consistent initialization size, that's the best.
It's like SDE by theory, so, right? Stochastic.
Yeah. Yes.
So thank you.